Will he stay? Will he go? The Lane Kiffin coaching saga pushes on to rivalry week, where all eyes are on Kiffin and his impending decision. Three programs are basically waiting. You could look at the recruiting aspect of it as well, because the impact is felt there also. Ole Miss is trying to prepare for the Egg Bowl, but the line of questions to Kiffin are about anything but.
Lane, Keith released a statement on Friday saying that you, him, and Chancellor Boyce had a meeting about your future. Are you able to elaborate on the nature of that meeting at all?
Yeah, like I said at the beginning, very fair question, but we're not answering anything that doesn't have to do with the game and the team and the season. But fair question.
Well, speaking of that, I mean, obviously the game's the biggest thing, but for the last 2 weeks, it's been anything but the game. So for you, when you think about how the last 2 weeks has kind of played out, is there anything, if you could, you would change about how your role in the last 2 weeks at all? I mean, is there anything you go back and change if you could?
Well, I mean, you say that, but people said the same thing about the Florida game, that there was all this distraction and how could the team focus, and I think they played pretty well. So I don't have anything more to say about that, but I think our team's been very focused since noise has been out there all the way back to the Oklahoma game and the tunnel before that and that morning and everything. What are they, 4-0? So it's a pretty good job by them.
You mentioned on Pat McAfee how you don't make decisions based on money. When you do make your decisions, what are the considerations for you then, especially when it comes to football decisions, right? Like, what are you thinking about?
Yeah, very fair question, but I'm not going into it because, like I said at the beginning, I'm going to keep this to this team and in this game.
Let's keep the conversation going and now bring in our recruiting expert, Andrew Ivins. And Andrew, real quick before we really do a deep dive into this whole topic, you hear from Lane Kiffin just now. Does that sound like a guy to you who's staying?
I don't know what Lane's going to do. Hey, I remember back when he was at Florida Atlantic, and it was very clear that he was leaving for somewhere else. I mean, he's a guy that beats to his own drum, so I think the next few days are going to be interesting. But here's the thing, tying this in with recruiting, Lane Kiffin is set up to go to the deadline, to extend this thing as far as he can, because you look at what Lane Kiffin has done over the past 4 years. He has signed a top 5 ranked transfer portal class. That transfer portal window doesn't open until January. I mean, Lane isn't going to be too concerned about the high school recruiting because he's done it in the transfer portal with the veterans. He knows if he stays at Ole Miss or wherever he ends up, he's going to have an opportunity to flip that roster because that's what he's done the past 4 years.
So, Andrew, if Lane's not worried right now about the timeline, knowing he can go into the transfer portal, you still have 3 schools out there in Ole Miss, Florida, and LSU who are kind of just waiting, and signing day coming up a week away, regardless of who the coach is for all 3 of those programs. Is it fair to say that this kind of like all 3 schools are being held hostage right now when it comes to the high school recruiting side of things?
Absolutely, Zach. And, I don't think it's just the Lane Kiffin decision. I mean, the coaching carousel, where we have all these job openings at what I would consider a lot of power players in the space, a lot of the blue bloods, and all it's going to take is a coach that's not expected to leave a school to end up somewhere else, and that is going to cause a major ripple effect. You see it right now, LSU sitting at number 12, Florida sitting at number 13. What if those schools don't get Lane Kiffin? What if they pivot to a Lincoln Riley? What if they pivot to a Jed Fish? What about Clark Lee at Vanderbilt? I mean, Lincoln Riley and USC right now, they have the number 1 ranked recruiting class in the country with over 35 prospects committed. I know Lincoln Riley has come out and said, hey, I'm not looking around for a job. But Zach, I spent the weekend in Gainesville. I was embedded in Gator Nation. My number 1 question is, hey, if Lincoln Riley, or if you guys aren't going to get Lane Kiffin, who's the number 2? And Lincoln Riley's a name that continue to come up. Jed Fish, he's got ties to the Florida Gators. Well, Washington right now, they have a recruiting class that ranks number 15 nationally. So, I think depending on what Lane decides to do, it's going to change a lot of decisions. And, when Jed Fish was at Arizona a few years ago and he left for Washington, he not only brought a number of players from that roster, he brought a lot of commits from that recruiting class. So I think we need to buckle up here over the next few days because, as soon as some of these contracts are signed and some of these coaches make a decision, it's going to alter a lot of recruitments here as we lead up to Wednesday's signing day.
Yeah, Andrew, so let's do a little deeper peel back of what it means for Gainesville and that great city with the University of Florida, because the time you spent there, what's the sense that you get around the recruits and how they feel about where things stand with the program right now, and if they stay committed, if they don't stay committed, depending on how the head coach position fills out?
Yeah, I think Florida right now, you look at the recruiting class, you got 10 in-state prospects. I think a lot of these guys are going to end up in the orange and blue, regardless of who the head coach is going to be. Heading down the stretch here, two names to certainly keep an eye on. The first one's going to be C.J. Bronaugh, cornerback out of the Orlando Metro, back-to-back 100-meter state champ in the Sunshine State. Ohio State has gotten involved with him. It is giving that family a lot to think about. For Florida, this is a guy that could use on the outside in the SEC, someone that can match and mirror all the speedy wide receivers everyone is trying to roster. Carson Baker's another guy to keep an eye on. Four-star running back. He's visited Ole Miss, where Lane Kiffin is currently the head coach. He's also been in North Carolina. He's going to get to Georgia Tech this upcoming weekend. So, Florida's recruiting class, it's sitting 13th right now. A lot of offensive linemen, a lot of in-state kids. I think these guys are going to end up in Gainesville regardless. Now, with Florida kind of being in this limbo, the issue becomes, they haven't had the ability to go out and find some late risers, some kids that are having excellent senior seasons. And I think whoever steps in, they're going to have to be very involved in the transfer portal. That is something Billy Napier really kind of shied away from. He wanted to build through the high school ranks, and that has set it up. A lot of young talent on the roster, but retention is going to be a big thing, and then finding a way to be competitive in 2026.
So then on the flip side, what's this mean for schools like Florida State, who obviously will play Florida this weekend, and the Noles coming out and saying they're going to retain Mike Norvell as their head coach? So from a state of Florida recruiting aspect, the Noles have their head coach for at least next year. Is this an opportunity for Florida State, maybe even Miami, to get in there and to try to get their hands on all the top recruits in the state because of what's going on in Gainesville?
You brought up Miami, and I think Miami is one of the programs that has taken advantage kind of the current landscape in college football. Yeah, Florida State comes out, that administration, and says, hey, Mike Norvell is going to be our guy moving forward. Well, Miami has already went and rated that commit list. They look for guys that, hey, we want in Coral Gables, we want on our roster. Florida State, they've added some players here in recent days. It looks like they're going to add some more before the early signing period. But the reality is Florida State isn't swimming in the same lane right now as some of these college football playoff contenders. I mean, there's a lot of prospects with some traits and some developmental upside, but the days of Florida State, competing for the 5 stars, the best around the country, those have kind of gone to the wayside. And it's Miami and other programs who have taken advantage. Jay Timmons, a top 247 cornerback, son of Lawrence Timmons, he was committed to Florida State. They got in on him early. Well, Ohio State, another program where there's some stability, contending for a spot in that college football playoff, they pried Jay Timmons away. I think the other thing where my mind goes when we talk about Florida's Big Three and where we are with recruiting is look at that 2027 cycle. So those are the high school juniors. I know we're closing the chapter on the seniors here right now, but it won't be long before these guys are taking visits and making decisions. You got 2 can't-miss prospects in South Florida, 5-star offensive tackle Mark Matthews, 5-star wide receiver Nick Lanier. And years prior, these would have been Big Three battles, but now Miami has the inside track. They're going to battle the out-of-state schools. They're going to battle the Georgias, the Alabamas, the Ohio State. So, yeah, I think long-term, this uncertainty is putting Florida, and it's put Florida State at a disadvantage.
Andrew Ivins, it's going to get interesting next week and even beyond that as we try to figure out what's going to happen with the rest of college football. Thank you so much. Appreciate it as we look towards next week. That's Wednesday, National Signing Day, where we'll have you covered over on YouTube, over here on HQ as well, with some National Signing Day live on the College Football CBS Sports page. That's all day starting at 10 a.m. Eastern for that coverage. Who's going where?